On 9 September 1941, the Kremlin slept uneasily. In a quiet Moscow office, Joseph Stalin stood alone, rigid with thought, listening to the night. A telephone rang sharply, cutting through the silence, demanding attention without mercy. Stalin lifted the receiver slowly, his face unreadable, his breath measured, his mind calculating. Across the line, Georgy Zhukov listened, already sensing danger before a word was spoken. Zhukov was 44 years old, hardened by defeat, trusted by fear, needed by fate. Leningrad loomed behind the silence, the cradle of the Bolshevik Revolution, surrounded, starved, heavy with meaning. The city bore Lenin's name, and Stalin knew he could not lose it, not under any cost. Stalin spoke quietly without warmth, assigning command, sealing destiny. There would be no evacuation, no surrender, no retreat, only endurance. Outside the Kremlin, the war stretched from the Atlantic to the Volga, swallowing nations, rewriting history. German armies surged eastward, confident and ruthless, believing Leningrad would fall within weeks. Stalin replaced hope with calculation, sentiment with orders, lives with objectives, victory with survival. As dawn approached Moscow, Zhukov prepared to fly north, toward a doomed city or a defiant one. The fate of millions balanced there between ice and steel, hunger and guns, will and collapse. Beyond Leningrad's borders, civilians waited in fear, soldiers dug frozen earth, and history held its breath. What Stalin understood that night, though never spoken, would shape years of suffering and survival. This decision would echo endlessly, through bombardment and famine, through courage and death, through time. In that quiet room, power moved invisibly toward Leningrad, toward judgment. The war waited for no one, and Leningrad would soon learn just how heavy history could be when survival was demanded. On 10 September 1941, Zhukov's aircraft descended through smoke, blackbursts and low clouds. Leningrad appeared beneath him, wounded already, scarred by fire, tense with fear. German artillery thundered nearby, close enough to feel, close enough to promise destruction. As his car moved through the streets, civilians dug anti-tank ditches with bare hands, silent with resolve. Women worked beside children, old men beside soldiers, driven by terror, held by stubborn will. The front lines pressed inward, tightening daily, measured now in kilometers, not miles. Zhukov absorbed everything quickly. Ruined buildings, exhausted faces, the sound of shells falling. This was not a city preparing to flee. This was a city bracing for annihilation. At headquarters, maps covered the walls. Red lines shrinking, blue arrows advancing relentlessly. German forces stood less than 10 kilometers away, close enough to see victory, close enough to strike. Previous command had failed here, paralyzed by loyalty, undone by hesitation. Zhukov did not hesitate. He studied the maps in silence, jaw clenched, eyes sharp with calculation. Then orders came, fast and brutal, spoken without emotion, enforced without mercy. Artillery would shift immediately. Infantry would consolidate. Naval guns would fire inland. Every weapon would speak. Every soldier would stand. Every meter would be contested. Retreat without orders meant execution. No exceptions, no debate. That night, Zhukov sent his report to Moscow, concise and unforgiving. Leningrad could be held, but only barely, only through absolute resolve. Evacuation must stop. Talk of withdrawal must die. Surrender was impossible. The city would either survive or be destroyed, but it would not yield. Stalin read the message carefully, weighed its meaning, and accepted its cost. Leningrad must be held at all costs without exception. Outside, German guns adjusted their range, preparing to speak longer and louder. The siege was beginning, and mercy would not be part of it. Part 3. By 21 September 1941, the ring closed fully, steel tightening around flesh. German armor locked the final roads, severing rail lines, cutting arteries, choking movement. Leningrad was encircled. 3 million souls trapped. History watching closely. From the south and west, Army Group North advanced methodically, confident and patient. From the north, Finnish forces held firm, silent partners in siege, unmoving and lethal. Inside the city, factories still ran, machines rattling defiantly amid falling shells. Workers slept beside lathes, ate at benches, died where they stood, unnamed, unseen. Zhukov walked the lines daily, boots crunching rubble, eyes measuring resolve. He spoke little, listened much, demanded everything. Artillery duels shook the earth day and night, without rhythm or mercy. German guns searched neighborhoods, struck randomly, punishing survival itself. Food convoys failed to arrive. Warehouses burned, reserves vanished. By late September, ration calculations began. Grim mathematics of survival. Flour dwindled first, then grain, then meat. Officials whispered numbers quietly, knowing what followed. Cold winds swept in early. Autumn fading fast, winter approaching without pause. Stalin received reports daily, precise and stripped of emotion. He asked about tonnage, about ammunition, about ice thickness. He did not ask about children or families or graves. Across Lake Ladoga, engineers surveyed routes, desperate and exposed. Boats crossed under fire. Supplies sank. Men vanished beneath waves. Yet they crossed again. This fragile lifeline would decide everything or nothing. In Leningrad, civilians listened to distant guns. Understanding time was shrinking. The siege was no longer coming, it had arrived. And with it came a test, not of armies alone, but of endurance itself. By 20 October 1941, winter pressed closer, faster than plans allowed. Snow dusted ruined streets, ice formed along canals. Hunger sharpened daily. German artillery intensified, shells striking markets, apartments, breadlines without warning. Fear became routine, death became familiar, survival became deliberate. Inside ration offices, calculations turned desperate. Margins evaporated, hope thinned. Bread rations fell first, quietly announced, grimly accepted. Workers received more, children received less. Fairness surrendered to necessity. Bakers altered recipes, mixing sawdust, cellulose, cottonseed cake into dough. The bread darkened, tasted bitter, yet remained precious beyond measure. Zhukov reinforced defenses relentlessly, rotating units, stiffening resolve, crushing doubt. Soldiers froze in trenches, rifles icing over, breath hanging like smoke. Still, they held their positions, driven by orders, fear, and pride. Across Lake Ladoga, storms battered barges, bombs shattered ice floes. Men vanished beneath waves, yet supplies moved, painfully slow, tragically insufficient but constant. Stalin reviewed tonnage figures nightly, tracking trucks lost, tracking survival mathematically. He authorized the road of life fully, knowing its weakness, accepting its cost. Inside Leningrad, electricity failed often. Water froze in pipes, homes darkened. People burned furniture, books, doors, anything combustible. Cultural treasures fed fires, history sacrificed for warmth. Hospitals overflowed again, not with wounded alone, but with the starving. Doctors collapsed beside patients, strength spent, duty unfinished. November approached quickly, bringing colder nights. Harsher truths, fewer illusions. The city no longer hoped for relief, only for endurance. This was not battle now, but attrition against flesh. Winter would decide what guns could not. By 20 November 1941, hunger became the enemy, constant and intimate. Ration cards were revised again. Lines grew longer. Bodies grew thinner. Workers received 375 grams of bread. Others only 200. The bread barely resembled food, yet it ruled every thought, every day. People chewed slowly, deliberately, extracting calories with focus, almost reverence. December arrived mercilessly, temperatures plunging, morale following closely. Another ration cut came swiftly, unavoidable, devastating. Workers now received 250 grams. Children and dependents 125. 4 thin slices to last a full day in sub-zero cold. Deaths multiplied quietly. Apartments became tombs. Stairwells filled with silence. Families lacked strength to bury their dead. Bodies froze where they fell. In the streets, snow covered the collapsed unnoticed until spring. Factories continued somehow. Machines turned by starving hands, producing shells and hope. Zhukov demanded discipline relentlessly, forbidding collapse. Punishing retreat, enforcing order. Soldiers fought on empty stomachs, sustained by resolve, not rations. Stalin received casualty numbers daily. rising sharply, staggering even seasoned clerks. He showed no reaction, asked only about supplies, about transport, about ice thickness. Across Lake Ladoga, trucks drove at night. Headlights darkened, ice cracking beneath weight. Some never returned, swallowed whole, unrecorded except in loss tallies. Yet enough arrived, barely enough, to prevent total collapse. By year's end, death rates reached tens of thousands per week. Leningrad was becoming a necropolis, alive only through stubborn refusal. The city endured not because it was strong, but because it would not yield. This winter stripped away illusion, revealing endurance in its rawest form. By 10 January 1942, the city still breathed, barely, stubbornly. The new year arrived without celebration, without warmth, without relief. Starvation eased slightly, not through abundance but through absence. So many had died that supplies stretched further, grim arithmetic of survival. Rations increased marginally, just enough to delay collapse, not enough to restore strength. Zhukov's presence remained constant, visible, unyielding, reassuring through severity. He inspected units personally, ignoring cold, ignoring hunger, demanding vigilance. The garrison endured, rifles manned, artillery crews firing on schedule. Factories that could still function continued producing ammunition, repairing weapons, defying logic. Civilians reported for shifts, walking slowly, collapsing often, returning regardless. Across Lake Ladoga, the ice roads stabilized, routes improved, convoys increased cautiously. Losses continued, but efficiency rose. Experience paid in lives. Stalin monitored the situation closely, now measuring endurance rather than crisis. He authorized limited evacuations, prioritizing children, the sick, the essential. Each crossing was dangerous, each survivor a narrow victory. German artillery still struck daily, killing without purpose, reminding everyone of proximity. Yet the front lines held firm, unmoved despite pressure. Attempts to break the blockade were discussed, postponed, reconsidered. The Red Army was learning, painfully, methodically, through blood. Leningrad became a symbol not announced, but understood. If it held, others would believe holding was possible. If it fell, faith would fracture everywhere. Through January and February, survival replaced hope, endurance replaced fear. The city did not recover, but it endured. And endurance in war becomes power. By 15 August 1942, the siege dragged on, grinding, unresolved. Leningrad survived its second summer, weakened but unbroken, scarred deeply. Rations remained minimal, hunger persistent, death quieter than before. German artillery continued methodically, striking districts, factories, morale. The road of life operated more efficiently now. Experience hard-won, losses still constant. Supplies crossed Lake Ladoga regularly, barges in summer, trucks in winter. Everything remained fragile, dependent on weather, luck, discipline. Stalin's focus shifted across the front. Stalingrad demanding attention, Moscow still vulnerable. Leningrad became one front among many, yet never forgotten. Orders continued to arrive, demanding resistance, forbidding despair, enforcing survival. Zhukov had moved on by now, reassigned to crises elsewhere, his work done. His imprint remained, discipline embedded, fear transformed into structure. Inside the city, life adapted to siege reality, routines shaped by shells. Children learned to identify artillery by sound. Adults measured time by rations. Factories increased output slowly. Workers fueled by necessity, not strength. The garrison held steady, reinforced cautiously, resupplied just enough. Attempts to break the blockade failed repeatedly. Attacks were repelled, losses absorbed. Stalin refused premature offensives, unwilling to trade men for symbolism. The Red Army was learning, painfully, with every loss, every victory. By late autumn, rumors spread quietly, cautiously of change. German confidence faltered elsewhere. Momentum slowed. Cracks appeared. The war no longer felt unstoppable, not everywhere, not always. In Leningrad, hope returned cautiously, fragile, dangerous. The city had endured 2 winters, something few believed possible. What remained was to break the ring, or die trying. On 12 January 1943, the silence shattered violently. Before dawn, Soviet artillery opened fire across frozen ground south of Lake Ladoga. Thousands of guns struck at once, coordinated, relentless, deafening. The earth convulsed, snow turned to smoke, darkness dissolved into flame. This was Operation Iskra, spark, born of revolution, born of necessity. Infantry surged forward behind the barrage, moving through ice, mud, and blood. German positions were deep, fortified, hardened by more than a year. Machine guns cut lanes through snow, mortars fell precisely, resistance fierce. Soviet units advanced slowly, paying for meters with lives, refusing retreat. Commanders pushed forward relentlessly, knowing failure meant continuation of death. For 6 days, the outcome remained uncertain, balanced between collapse and breakthrough. Casualties mounted on both sides. Exhaustion pressed heavily, resolve tested brutally. Inside Leningrad, civilians listened to distant thunder, sensing something different. The sound was heavier now, sustained, purposeful. On 18 January 1943, near Workers' Settlement No. 5, two forces met. Units from the Leningrad front and Volkhov front linked, hands shaking. Weapons lowered briefly. The corridor was narrow, fragile, under constant artillery fire. 8 to 11 kilometers wide, yet wider than hope had been. For the first time in months, Leningrad was not alone. The blockade was broken, not ended but breached. News raced to Moscow swiftly, carried by wire, carried by consequence. Stalin read the telegram carefully, twice, without expression. Then he spoke simply, acknowledging reality, accepting outcome. "Leningrad," he said, "the blockade is broken." What followed would reveal what that meant to him. On 18 January 1943, Stalin remained in the Kremlin motionless. The telegram rested on his desk, unfolded, reread twice. Around him, aides waited silently, sensing importance, measuring reaction. Stalin looked up slowly, eyes unreadable, voice controlled. He spoke few words, deliberate, final, decisive. Leningrad is no longer cut off. There was no smile, no relief, no celebration. Instead, Stalin turned immediately to consequence, to authority. Within hours, Order Number 95 was drafted. The order praised courage, endurance, sacrifice. It named units, commanders, fronts. Then came an instruction, unusual, symbolic, powerful. An artillery salute would be fired in Leningrad itself. This was unprecedented, risky, deliberate. Artillery salutes marked victory, normally in Moscow. Leningrad remained under fire, still starving, still threatened. Yet Stalin insisted the guns would speak. That evening, in freezing darkness, Soviet artillery fired. 324 guns thundered, 24 salvos. Civilians emerged slowly, weak, trembling. They listened in silence. Some wept, others froze. For months, they had heard only enemy shells. Now Soviet guns spoke celebration, defiance, survival. Stalin never witnessed it, never needed to. The salute was his language, his acknowledgement, his verdict. Leningrad had held, therefore the decision was correct. From endurance came proof. From proof came belief. On 27 January 1944, the siege of Leningrad ended finally. After 872 days, Soviet forces had grown stronger, disciplined, overwhelming, their advance relentless and methodical. German defenses crumbled under artillery, tanks, infantry, airstrikes, every hammer of experience and firepower brought to bear. The city, battered, starving, scarred, emerged from shadow into survival. Stalin issued another order that morning, terse, absolute, authoritative. The blockade was lifted. Victory, total and undeniable, was proclaimed over radio, over loudspeakers across the Soviet Union. 324 guns fired 24 salvos again, this time in Moscow, echoing the previous year's salute in Leningrad itself. The symbolism was not lost, proof of defiance, endurance, and survival against impossible odds. Leningrad had paid a price almost beyond comprehension. Over 600,000 documented dead, likely more. Families lost, homes destroyed, lives uncounted. Yet the city had not surrendered, had not broken, had not yielded to Nazi power. The Red Army and civilians had endured, fought, and survived where many expected them to fail. For Stalin, the survival of Leningrad validated his ruthless calculations, his unflinching decisions. Evacuation had been forbidden, famine tolerated, artillery sacrificed, civilians endangered. Yet the strategic goal was achieved. Leningrad's defiance tied down German forces, demonstrated the limits of their power, and preserved the revolution's cradle. For the Soviet Union, it became a symbol. Endurance could defeat even the most powerful enemy. The artillery salutes, the orders, the meticulous records. They were his language of recognition. Cold yet definitive, Leningrad had survived. The impossible had been made real. From desperate men, from civilians starving and freezing, from one decisive leader's unyielding will, came a truth the world could not ignore. The Soviet Union could endure, resist, and ultimately break even the most relentless assault. Leningrad proved that war is not decided by speed alone, nor by firepower, nor by certainty of victory. It is decided by endurance, by the refusal to surrender when surrender seems logical, merciful, inevitable. The city survived because it was ordered to survive, because it chose to survive, and because millions paid the price in silence. The siege did not end cleanly. It ended with graves beneath snow, with empty apartments, with memories too heavy to celebrate. But it ended standing. And in that survival, the world learned a hard truth. An enemy that cannot be broken by hunger, cold, or time cannot be defeated quickly. And sometimes not at all. Leningrad did not just outlast the siege. It outlasted expectation. It outlasted certainty. It outlasted the idea that power alone decides history. The city lived. And because it lived, the war would turn.